Welcome to the Harris County Flood Control District's virtual community engagement meeting to discuss the Mercer Stormwater Detention Basin project. This virtual community meeting is being offered by the Flood Control District to share vital information with the community and to gather your input on flood risk reduction efforts in your area. Community engagement is a critical component of our work, and we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us this evening. My name is Cristal Ramirez with the Flood Control District Communications team. I am joined tonight by a team of Flood Control District leadership and subject matter experts to ensure we continue to keep you up to date on important flood mitigation efforts. We are glad to see the community engage with this program and look forward to gathering your feedback tonight. Moving forward, we will continue to share updates on this and other projects in your area to keep you involved and informed. First, we would like to begin tonight's meeting with remarks from Harris County Precinct 1 Commissioner Rodney Ellis.
Hi, I'm Rodney Ellis. On behalf of Harris County Precinct 1 and the Flood Control District, welcome to this informative meeting about significant flood control projects in your area. As always, we have you in mind when we design projects to mitigate flooding to protect your homes and businesses. We want to be transparent with all projects because we cannot do it without your participation. Every community, regardless of the zip code, deserves increased protection from flooding. That's why equity is our guiding principle in assigning our infrastructure investments. In addition, we're prioritizing communities that are most vulnerable to flooding and have historically taken the longest to recover. Let me thank flood control officials for developing this and other projects across Harris County. Most importantly, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to participate in this community meeting tonight. We know you could have been somewhere else doing something else, but we're glad you're here. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ellis. This virtual public meeting will begin with a presentation to share program updates, including an overview of the Mercer Stormwater Detention Basin, timelines, and next steps. The presentation will be followed by a virtual question and answer session with the Flood Control District team members, where we'll respond to your questions and comment on some of the frequently asked questions we receive from the public. Attendees will be able to submit comments and questions through the website or by phone. Any comments not addressed during the Q&A session will receive a response from the Flood Control District after the close of the comment period. Instructions on how to participate in the virtual meeting are included in this slide, on this virtual meeting webpage, and on the Flood Control District's website. I will also share a reminder of these instructions when we reach the Q&A portion of the meeting. We will now transition to Melissa Meyer, Interim Engineering Division Director with the Flood Control District, who will share information about the organization and this program. Melissa, over to you.
Thank you, Crystal. And I'd like to give a special thanks to each and everyone joining us here tonight. Your involvement with us is appreciated and only enhances our efforts. In tonight's presentation, we will provide an overview of our efforts on the Mercer Stormwater Detention Basin. But before we get into project specifics, we want to share a bit of background about the Flood Control District. The Harris County Flood Control District is a special purpose district that was created by the Texas State Legislature in 1937 as a response to the devastating floods that hit our region in 1929 and 1935. The Flood Control District was established under the governance of the Harris County Commissioners Court and works closely with other public works entities in our region, such as the Harris County Engineering Department and the City of Houston. Our organization was created in part to serve as a local partner and project sponsor in order to leverage federal funding for flood damage reduction projects in our region. And since our creation, our mission has expanded, leading to billions of dollars in federal, state, and locally funded infrastructure improvements being constructed. The Flood Control District's mission is to provide flood damage reduction projects that work with appropriate regard for community and natural values. Understanding that our systems may mean different things to many people makes it challenging to construct effective projects that also provide the multifunctional use communities seek, as well as construct them with regard to natural values in our highly urbanized and continuously growing region. Harris County includes 23 main watersheds comprising approximately 1,800 square miles of land and more than 2,500 linear miles of channels, including man-made channels and natural streams, creeks, and bayous. To imagine the totality of this infrastructure, note that 2,500 miles is approximately the distance from New York to California. The 23 watersheds are all distinct geographical regions of land that serve as a catchment area that drains to a common main channel or drainage outlet. Each watershed has its own unique characteristics and needs based on its level of maturity and geographical location. The program and projects we are presenting on tonight are in the Cypress Creek watershed located in Northwest Harris County. Now, Harris County and its surrounding area is flood prone for a number of reasons. Namely, it's because we experience extreme rainfall events along the Texas coast, including tropical storms and hurricanes. Our area has a largely flat topography or elevation with slow draining land. And lastly, we have large concentrations of soil types such as clay that do not soak up excess rainfall quickly. While the flood control district plays a critical role in the overall flood risk reduction for our area, we are one of several jurisdictional entities involved in the overall efforts of our region. For instance, as rain falls on your roof, it starts the process of flowing through several jurisdictions, such as public and private driveways, parking lots and yards, and into streets and drains managed by the Harris County Engineering Department or a municipal utility district, or a city, such as the city of Houston, before it outfalls or flows into a larger basin or channel, creek, or bayou that the flood control district owns and maintains. This slide illustrates the various jurisdictions, which sometimes we even share with other entities. Inside neighborhoods, as shown on the left side of this illustration, storm sewers and roadside ditches collect stormwater runoff and start the process of moving it away from homes and streets. Storm sewers, drains, roadside ditches, and outfalls are all the responsibility of the underlying municipality. The larger bayous and channels that take collected stormwater and convey it through our drainage system network to Galveston Bay are the responsibility of the flood control district, and this is shown on the right side of the illustration. In the middle of the illustration is a stormwater detention basin that is sometimes constructed by the flood control district. When storm sewers on the left side of the illustration are increased in size without appropriate mitigation, it would increase the amount of stormwater draining into the area's bayous and channels. Since it's our policy to avoid any adverse impacts from a project construction, detention basins are built to help safely take in the increased amount of stormwater and temporarily store it during heavy rain events. Often we partner with Harris County precincts, municipal utility districts, and other entities to allow these sponsors to add and maintain recreational amenities, such as trails to these basins and channels to allow for multifunctional community use of our facilities. On August 25th, 2018, Harris County voters approved $2.5 billion in bond funding for flood risk reduction projects. This vote happened after a series of 23 meetings were held with community members across Harris County, one per watershed, which resulted in a list that makes up the now 181 bond projects being funded. A total of more than $1.35 billion in partnership funding has been secured thus far to progress the 2018 bond program even further. The actual schedule of each individual bond project will depend on a variety of factors, including the overall project planning, design, and construction life cycles. Some tasks included in these life cycles, such as environmental permitting, right-of-way acquisition and utility relocation, or in some cases, partner funding requirements of a particular grant, may extend the time it takes to complete the overall schedule of the project. Project lists and estimated schedules are updated regularly on our website. As bond projects move forward, we're making significant progress towards resilience in Harris County. We shared an update with the Harris County Commissioners Court in January of this year and highlighted a few notable stats. We've completed or closed 27 projects. We've secured $1.43 billion in partnership funding to stretch the bond funds even further for our community. And we've hosted more than 180 community engagement meetings. Your input is critical to our efforts, and we want to ensure our conversations continue. We'll continue these biannual updates moving forward to share progress on the program. While the voter bond was for $2.5 billion, the full cost of every project in our bond list is almost $5 billion. So we made it clear from the outset that we would need funding partners to obtain the full potential of the constructed projects in the bond program. And as I've mentioned, we've had some success so far by securing more than $1.35 billion in partnership funds for projects across Harris County. And this graphic illustrates that there are many partnership opportunity sources, including federal, state, and local funding that the Flood Control District is working to secure for Harris County. Each agency has its own definition of an eligible project, as well as its own requirements for local match funding. So the Flood Control District works diligently to match each project to the appropriate partnership opportunity. We'll now discuss the portion of the program that is specifically about the Mercer Stormwater Detention Basin project. As a reminder, we are looking for your participation as we discuss this portion of the program in more detail. So please feel free to drop any questions or comments you have into the comment box, or to comment via phone by pushing the star key. The project area is in the downstream portion of Cypress Creek, east of the Hardy Toll Road and north of FM 1960. The Mercer Stormwater Detention Basin is expected to hold 512 acre-feet of stormwater once completed. This project will also be constructed to avoid some jurisdictional wetlands at the site. Disturbing the wetlands that are currently on the property would require extensive environmental permitting. As we discussed at last year's meeting, this project was awarded a $15.4 million grant from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's Community Block Development Grant Disaster Recovery 2018 Fund. This CDBG-DR grant has stipulations for when the project must be completed. So this project has been on an expedited timeline, with the preliminary engineering report being transmitted to Harris County Commissioners Court late last summer. And we expect construction to begin later this year. We'll discuss some of the project background before moving into the construction timeline and impacts. What we are looking at here is the FEMA regulatory floodplains in and around the proposed project area. The darkest blue shows the floodway, which is the part of the floodplain where floodwaters are the deepest and fastest. The next shade of blue is the 1% or 100-year regulatory floodplain, and the lightest blue is a 0.2% or 500-year regulatory floodplain. As you can see, much of this area is within the floodway and the 100-year regulatory floodplain. During a heavy rainfall event, our data shows that a main contributor of flooding in this area is sheet flow, which impacts the project area and nearby neighborhoods. I would also like to take a moment to point out the floodplain preservation sites marked on the map in orange. For years, Harris County and the Flood Control District have purchased undeveloped property in the Cypress Creek watershed to essentially protect it from development. Now here's a closer look at the proposed Mercer Stormwater Detention Basin's project components. This project is designed to include 2 dry bottom stormwater detention basins that are connected by an equalizer pipe underground that avoids most of the jurisdictional wetlands and streams on the property. The 2 basins will hold a combined 512 acre-feet of stormwater during heavy rain events. A 54-inch outfall pipe will be constructed to move water from the basin into Cypress Creek. And lastly, a 30-inch wide berm will be constructed around the project to accommodate maintenance and possible future recreational amenities. Now let's take a look at the benefits that the project will provide. This project is expected to remove the 100-year area of inundation from a total of 30 structures. The project is also expected to remove the 500-year area of inundation from an additional 17 structures. Additionally, the water surface elevation will be lowered by 0.35 feet during the 100-year storm events. And lastly, this project has been designed to avoid some wetlands on the project site. Impacting wetlands would involve a lengthy environmental permitting process, which could significantly delay the project's timeline. Therefore, because we needed to expedite this project due to the CDBG-DR funding, we are avoiding much of those wetlands. Now let's talk about some of the funding this project received and the stipulations that come with this funding. Like we have mentioned, the Mercer Stormwater Detention Basin project was awarded $15.4 million from the U.S. HUD Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Program, or CDBG-DR program. The requirements for this funding are that the Flood Control District contribute a local match of $6.8 million from the 2018 bond program. We also used bond funds to acquire the property that this project will be built on, and this property was acquired earlier this summer. The other requirement for this funding is that the construction of the project must be completed and closed out by fall of 2024. We hope to complete the construction next summer. Now let's talk about the project outlook and the next steps for the project. Here's a typical project lifecycle chart that generally all of our projects go through. As you can see on the slide here, we are currently in the design stage for this project. During this stage, we will finalize the design in the recommended project, create construction-ready plans, and obtain any necessary environmental permitting to prepare for the construction stage. The project is expected to move into the construction stage in the next few months. And now that we've talked about the project's life cycle, let's talk about our project timeline going forward. The final design was completed this summer of 2023, and property acquisition was completed in August of 2023. We are currently soliciting bids for a construction contractor, and we expect construction to begin in November or December of this year. And finally, construction will need to be completed in the summer of 2024 to meet the CDBG-DR funding requirements. As with any construction project, there will be those unavoidable construction inconveniences. We expect that heavy machinery and trucks carrying away materials from the site will be exiting and entering the property off of FM 1960 or Lazy Ravine Road in the Memorial Halls subdivision. And we expect that there may be some construction noise that will be audible from adjacent homes in the Memorial Hills subdivision. The good news for this project, though, is that the property is set back from the surrounding roads, and there's also a tree buffer masking the project site from the road. I'll now turn the program back over to Crystal to kick off the Q&A. Crystal?
Thanks, Melissa. Before we move into the Q&A, I want to share a quick reminder that we're looking for your input. We'd love to hear from you on this and other projects moving forward across Harris County. Your input is critical as we continue to develop project plans for this and other flood risk reduction efforts. All comments and questions received this evening will be considered as we develop plans for this effort, but the conversation doesn't end here. To learn more about this project, ask questions, and sign up for our mailing list, please visit hcfcd.org/Mercer. As a reminder, there are 3 ways to submit a comment about this project during tonight's session. Submit a comment on this site in the box near the presentation live stream. Submit a comment on the Flood Control District's website at hcfcd.org/Mercer. Or submit a comment via phone at 855-925-2801, utilizing meeting code 2586. If you are joining us via phone tonight, please press star to leave a message. Additionally, I want to reiterate that any questions not addressed during tonight's Q&A will receive a response from the Flood Control District following the close of the comment period. Information from this meeting and a recording of the live stream will be available on the Flood Control District's website and YouTube channel. Joining Melissa for our Q&A session tonight is Alvin Jackson with the project team. Now it's time to take some of your questions. Okay, Alvin, let's start with our first questions of the evening from Oscar. Alvin, Oscar is asking for you to explain where the Mercer Stormwater Detention Basin will be receiving water from. Oscar is asking if it will only be from Cypress Creek or from other sources.
You're muted, Alvin.
I apologize for that. I'm sorry. The Mercer Stormwater Detention Basin will be handling sheet flow and water inundation that's in the Mercer area, as well as it will assist in the Memorial Hill project as well. So it'll be basically providing mitigation to the Cypress Creek watershed.
Thank you, Alvin. I have another question. Please don't go far for this question. It's also for you. Can you tell our audience what is the estimated capacity of the stormwater detention basin, Mercer Stormwater Detention Basin?
And the Mercer Stormwater Detention Basin will hold 512 acre-feet of detention.
Thank you. Okay, Melissa, hopefully you've been able to get a sip of water and catch your breath, as this question is for you. So let's take a moment to untangle different projects that are going on in the area. First, how is this project we are discussing tonight related to the Mercer Botanic Garden?
Sure. It isn't really related, but it is nearby. The Mercer Botanic Garden is owned by Harris County and not the Flood Control District. From what I understand, there are flood mitigation strategies planned for the site, but it's a separate effort from the Mercer Stormwater Detention Basin that we're discussing here tonight.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay, Alvin, to help clear up any confusion about another project in the area, Alvin, Oscar would appreciate it if you could tell us about the Memorial Hills project and how it relates or does not relate to the Mercer Stormwater Detention Basin.
The Memorial Hill project is a local drainage project for Memorial Hill neighborhood. This is being handled by the Harris County Engineering Department. It is separate from the Flood Control District project, Mercer Stormwater Detention. Having said that, though, it does maximize and benefit the cost of the local drainage project. Some flow from Mercer Hill neighborhood could be diverted into the Mercer Stormwater Detention Basin until it can be drained into Cypress Creek. You can reach out to the Harris County Engineering Department for more current status on their project.
Thank you. Alvin, sticking with you for a little bit for this next question. I'm sure many residents are concerned about the property acquisition. This is always a sensitive and important topic. Has property acquisition been completed for this project?
The property acquisition for this project, as mentioned earlier in the slide, has been obtained for this project.
Thank you. Melissa, in the presentation, we mentioned Atlas 14. What is Atlas 14? Why is it important, and what are the rainfall totals for a 100-year Atlas 14 event?
So Atlas 14 is the official peer-reviewed record of precipitation frequency estimates for the United States and affiliated territories. It's produced by the National Weather Service Office of Water Prediction, which is part of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or also known as NOAA. Atlas 14 essentially changed the rainfall amounts for the design storms that engineers use to calculate and predict how stormwater will behave in certain storm events. For the Cypress Creek watershed, using Atlas 14 data, a storm event with 16.3 inches of rainfall in a 24-hour period is classified as a 100-year Atlas 14 rainfall event.
Great. Thank you, Melissa. Alvin, I think you are the best person to answer this next question for us. Many people have questions about their specific property. I know we can't get down to the property level specifics in this meeting, but can you tell us what benefits this project will provide?
Okay, this project removes the 100-year area of inundation based on Atlas 14 rainfall total for 30 structures. The project also removes the 500-year area inundation based on Atlas for an additional 17 structures. This project lowers the water surface elevation 0.35 feet, and the project Atlas. Lastly, the project avoids wetlands in the effort to reduce the amount of environmental permits that which can delay the project.
Thank you, Alvin. There are definitely some informed and interested residents in the Cypress Creek watershed. We are happy to have you join us tonight. Melissa, many of these residents are aware of the different efforts to help reduce the risk of flooding in the Cypress Creek watershed. One of those efforts is purchasing property for floodplain preservation. Can you talk a bit about floodplain preservation?
Yeah, floodplain preservation properties are those properties that are acquired and held in fee or easements to maintain their natural flood storage benefits and prevent future developments that could contribute to increased flood risk.
Thanks, Melissa. Let's jump back to you, Alvin, for this next question. Can this project be expanded in the future to increase the amount of storage within the basin / basins?
This basin that we are constructing is in its ultimate design, and there are no plans to expand it in the future.
Thank you, Alvin. I want to pause for a brief reminder. The Flood Control District always welcomes your input on projects. If you haven't submitted a question during tonight's live meeting, you can always visit the project webpage at www.hcfcd.org/Mercer at your convenience and click Submit a comment to ask a question or provide project input. Melissa, this question is for you. Will this project eliminate flooding altogether?
Although this project will reduce the risk of flooding in the area, it cannot eliminate flooding. The Flood Control District recommends that everyone in Harris County and surrounding areas have flood insurance to insure against the possibility of personal and financial loss. I would also encourage everyone to learn more about the Flood Control District's MAP Next initiative, which aims to produce Harris County's most comprehensive and complete set of flood hazard maps and information.
Thank you, Melissa. Alvin, those who live nearby the construction area are all likely concerned about dust and dirt as it leaves the construction site. I remember in August this year, there was no rain to really help control the dust issue. Can you tell us who is responsible for dust control and cleaning dirt off roads while construction is underway?
It is the responsibility of the construction contractor, and this is stated in their contract with the Flood Control District. They use practice to keep the dirt from the construction site for impacting nearby roads and prevent impact to the stormwater quality. The contractors will also use water trucks as needed to help control the dust issues that we may have when we're in a dry season. Any concerns in the time of construction should be reported to the Flood Control District Service Request Center on our website at www.hcfcd.org.
Thank you, Alvin. Okay, Melissa, this next one is for you. Can you help to explain this concept to those listening tonight? Many residents obviously would want to see stormwater move out of their neighborhood more quickly. Why can't local governments just widen neighborhood ditches and roadside ditches to solve the flooding problem?
Sure, that's a good question. The Flood Control District is a no adverse impact organization, and this means that the Flood Control District does not create projects that will negatively impact any of the community downstream.
Thank you, Melissa. let's stay with you for this next question. What about wildlife in this area and environmental impacts in construction of these basins?
If the flood control district follows federal law on the protection of sensitive environmental areas such as wetlands, and we check for threatened and endangered species, and we avoid clearing during migratory bird nesting season.
Thank you, Melissa. Alvin, flood risk reduction is the goal of our agency, but this is an important topic for residents, including Evelyn, who has joined us tonight. Will there be any recreational amenities planned around this project?
The flood control does not typically build trails and other recreational amenities, but we frequently work with partners, organizations who want to finance and maintain any recreational elements with the community desire. At this time, we do not have any definitive plans to work with a community, a partner on developing recreation amenities for this site.
Thank you, Alvin. Melissa, this question is for you. Jim is asking this next question about forested basins. He is asking that if the basins cannot have wet bottoms for whatever reason, can trees be planted in the basin and on the slopes to create a more natural and beneficial ecosystem than would be provided by a mowed basin? He says that the Dry Creek Detention Basin west of Barker Cypress and north of Jarvis Road is an example of a detention basin with a forested bottom along Cypress Creek.
Thanks for that question, Jim. It kind of depends on what location we're specifically looking at. There are some areas where we don't like to put extra trees in there just because we can't afford any of the extra capacity to be taken up. But we do have tree planting programs where we can plant trees up on the maintenance berms or on the slopes. We don't typically put them in the bottom of basins of flood control.
Thanks, Melissa. Circling back to the idea of floodplain preservation and stormwater detention bases in the Cypress Creek watershed, can you explain perhaps why didn't the flood control district buy this property for flood mitigation years ago?
Yeah, so much of Harris County was developed before county development regulations were adopted in the 1980s and before current technology improved our understanding of floodplains. Also, the 2018 Flood Control District Bond Program approved by voters profoundly changed the flood control district's investment in flood risk reduction. It provided $2.5 billion to an agency that before then had only had about $60 million per year available for capital projects, including floodplain preservation, property acquisition, and other activities throughout Harris County.
Thank you. Melissa, this next question is about development. I know our agency does not regulate development, but I think we can help with this next question. If flooding is an issue in this area, why are there more homes and structures being built in the Cypress Creek watershed?
Yeah, governments cannot prohibit the lawful use of private property without compensation. However, governments can regulate development for the public good. In Harris County, development is regulated by the underlying municipality or Harris County for unincorporated areas. Regulations around development focus on property within the 100-year regulatory floodplain. And if you're interested in where a property falls within the current 100-year regulatory floodplain, please consult Flood Education Mapping Tool at harriscountymfemt.org.
Thank you, Melissa. I want to pause for a brief reminder. There are 3 ways to submit a comment about this project during tonight's session. Submit a comment on this site in the box near the presentation live stream. Submit a comment on the Flood Control District's website at hcfcd.org/Mercer, or submit a comment via phone at 855-925-2801, utilizing meeting code 2586. If you are joining us via phone tonight, please press star to leave a message. Let's continue with the questions. Alvin, I know we have talked about the project life cycle and all the steps it takes to get a project to construction. Can you tell us what stage of the project life cycle is the Mercer Stormwater Detention Basin project?
The station, currently we've gone through the design component part of it, and we're preparing to start the construction phase part of it. We've received bids on the project. The project will be awarded sometime this summer, and construction will start near November and December, as indicated in the slide.
Thank you, Alvin. Melissa, the Flood Control District has funding and is actively securing funding to ultimately build flood damage reduction projects. But what happens after these projects are in the ground? Is the Flood Control District responsible for maintenance and upkeep of stormwater detention basins after they are complete?
Generally speaking, yes. But to clarify, the Flood Control District is responsible for maintenance such as mowing, debris removal, and vegetation management of its properties. We mow the majority of our channels and basins only 3 times a year. However, there are instances where a local entity, such as a MUD or an HOA, chooses to enter into an agreement with us, where the Flood Control District pays them for the 3 mowing cycles, and the entity takes on the cost for additional mowing cycles at their discretion. If and when a sponsor chooses to build and maintain a recreational amenity on Flood Control District property, mowing is often a part of that conversation, and similar agreements as noted above can be utilized. Also, I want to mention that we have a very helpful interactive mowing tool on our website at hcfcd.org that's updated to reflect our current mowing activities.
Thank you, Melissa. In the presentation tonight, we've called this project a stormwater detention basin. How is a stormwater detention basin different than a man-made lake or pond? Alvin or Melissa?
I'll take the
chime in on that.
A stormwater detention basin is a large excavated area engineered to take in and temporarily hold excess stormwater during heavy rain events. They can prevent or reduce the amount of stormwater that overflows the bayou or creek banks. The water drains from the basin back into the bayou or creek slowly by gravity as the water recedes.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm sticking with you. Excessive rainfall is obviously the biggest contributor to flooding in this area. So when there is rainfall, there's a rainfall event occurring in the area. What is happening to explain the flooding issue we are seeing in the project area?
So our data shows that the main flooding contributor in this area is actually sheet flow, which is defined as the overland transport of stormwater in a shallow concentrated flow. Sheet flow impacts the project area and all of the nearby neighborhoods.
Melissa, this one's for you as well. What are the requirements and status for the CDBG DR funding?
Yeah, so the Flood Control District received $15.4 million from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for the Mercer Stormwater Detention Basin. The Flood Control District must contribute a local match of $6.8 million from the 2018 bond program. And one of the requirements of the CDBG DR grant for this project is that construction must be complete by summer of 2024, which means that we have a much more truncated timeline.
Thank you, Melissa. Alvin, this question is for you. Some of our informed residents have heard that there are 20+ stormwater detention basins planned for the Cypress Creek watershed. We mentioned that this project consists of 2 dry bottom basins. So does this project account for 2 of the 20+ basins?
That's a good question. Because it is a bit confusing. This project is considered only as one basin of the 22 identified stormwater detention basin for the Cypress Creek shed. But yes, it will include 2 dry bottoms, which are interconnected to work as one.
Thank you, Alvin. Melissa, would you mind going back to generally explain how the project will be constructed?
Yeah, as mentioned, this project will include 2 dry bottom stormwater detention basins that are connected by an equalizer pipe underground that avoids most of the jurisdictional wetlands and streams on the property. The 2 basins will hold a combined 512 acre-feet of stormwater during heavy rain. A 54-inch outfall pipe will be constructed to move water from the basin into Cypress Creek, and a 30-inch wide berm will be constructed to accommodate maintenance and future recreational amenities around the top.
Thank you, Melissa. As you mentioned, jurisdictional wetlands. What is a jurisdictional wetland?
Yeah, the United States Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, defines a wetland as an area or areas that are inundated or saturated by surface or groundwater at a frequency and duration sufficient to support, and that under normal circumstances do support, a prevalence of vegetation that's typically adapted for life in saturated soil conditions. Wetlands generally include swamps, marshes, bogs, and similar areas.
Thank you, Melissa. Alvin, Jim is asking if there is an estimate of cost per acre foot for the storage created by the Mercer Stormwater Detention Basin.
I don't have that figure tonight for this particular project, but I will note it and we can get back with him on that answer.
Thank you. Alvin, I know we can't really get into property level specifics, but Evelyn is asking about a library in the area. Are you aware of this? If not, we can circle back to her.
Yeah, we will have to circle back to her because I am not aware of a library being in the area of this particular project. I haven't heard anything on it.
Okay, thank
So we
you.
have to get back with her on that.
Thank you, Alvin. I want to pause for a brief reminder. As a reminder, there are 3 ways to submit a comment about this project during tonight's session. Submit a comment on this site in the box near the presentation live stream. Submit a comment on the Flood Control District's website at hcfcd.org/Mercer, or submit a comment via phone at 855-925-2801, utilizing meeting code 2586. If you are joining us via phone tonight, please press star to leave a message. Let's go back to the questions. One of our guests tonight has commented that the schedule seems a bit aggressive. Can you share what obstacles would cause a delay in meeting the fall 2024 target date? Thank you for that question, Leander. Melissa, do you want to take that one?
Sure. This is a bit of an aggressive schedule, but we're going to do the best we can because the funding is on the line. The biggest obstacle I can imagine would be weather delays. You know, obviously when it rains, the contractor has to slow down. They can't excavate as quickly as they would like to. There could also be occasional things that we didn't know were there and weren't shown in the plans. But hopefully we will not encounter too many obstacles and still meet our 2024 target date for CDBG.
Thank you, Melissa. Alvin, Evelyn wants you to be aware that the library is at the Mercer Arboretum. Arboretum, yes.
Arboretum, yeah, that's over, I believe, off of Westfield. Aldine Westfield Road is where the Arboretum is for the Mercer Arboretum, which is not near this site, it's farther east of this location.
Thank you, Alvin. Melissa, for those who have just joined us late, can you take us back to slide 13 to walk through the presentation?
Sure. So just a reminder, we are looking for your participation as we discuss this portion of the program in more detail. So please feel free to drop any questions or comments into the comment box or to comment via phone by pushing the star key. The project area is in the downstream portion of Cypress Creek, east of the Hardy Toll Road and north of FM 1960. The Mercer Stormwater Detention Basin is expected to hold 512 acre-feet of stormwater once completed. This project will also be constructed to avoid some jurisdictional wetlands at the site. Disturbing the wetlands that are currently on the property would require extensive environmental permitting. And as we discussed at last year's meeting, this project was awarded a $15.4 million grant from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development's Community Block Development Grant Disaster Recovery 2018 Fund. The CDBG-DR grant has stipulations for when the project must be completed, so this project has been on an expedited timeline, with the preliminary engineering report being transmitted to Harris County Commissioners Court late last summer. And we expect construction to begin later this year. We will discuss some of the project background before moving into the construction timeline and impacts. So what we're looking at here is the FEMA regulatory floodplains in and around the proposed project area. The darkest blue shows the floodway, which is the part of the floodplain where floodwaters are the deepest and fastest. This next shade of blue is the 1% or 100-year regulatory floodplain, and the lightest blue is the 0.2% or 500-year regulatory floodplain. As you can see, much of this area is within the floodway in the 100-year regulatory floodplain. During a heavy rainfall event, our data shows that a main contributor of flooding in this area is sheet flow, which impacts the project in nearby neighborhoods. I would like to take a moment to point out the floodplain preservation sites marked on the map in orange. For years, Harris County and the Flood Control District have purchased undeveloped property in the Cypress Creek watershed to essentially protect it from development. Here's a closer look at the proposed Mercer Stormwater Detention Basin's project components. This project is designed to include 2 dry bottom stormwater detention basins that are connected by an equalizer pipe underground that avoids most of the jurisdictional wetlands and streams on the property. The 2 basins will hold a combined 512 acre-feet of stormwater during heavy rain events. And a 54-inch outfall pipe will be constructed to move the water from the basin into Cypress Creek. Lastly, a 30-inch wide berm will be constructed around the project to accommodate maintenance and possible future recreational amenities. Now let's take a look at the benefits that the project will provide. This project is expected to remove the 100-year area of inundation from a total of 30 structures. The project is also expected to remove the 500-year area of inundation from an additional 17 structures. And finally, the water surface elevation will be lowered by 0.35 feet during the 100-year storm events. This project was also designed to avoid some wetlands on the project sites. Impacting those wetlands would involve a lengthy environmental permitting process, which could significantly delay the project's timeline. Since we needed to expedite this project due to the CDBG-DR funding, we're avoiding much of those wetlands. Let's talk about some of the funding that this project received and the stipulations that come with that funding. Like we've mentioned, the Mercer Stormwater Detention Basin was awarded a $15.4 million grant from the U.S. HUD Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Program, or CDBG-DR program. The requirements for this funding are that the Flood Control District contribute a local match of $6.8 million from the 2018 bond program. We also used bond funds to acquire the property that this project will be built on, and the property was acquired earlier this summer. The other requirement for this funding is that the construction of the project must be completed and closed out by fall of 2024. And we hope to complete construction next summer. Let's talk about the project outlook and the next steps for the project. This graphic here is our typical project lifecycle chart that generally all of our projects go through. As you can see on the slide here, we are currently in the design stage for this project. And during this stage, we'll finalize the design for the recommended project, create construction-ready plans, and obtain any necessary permitting to prepare for the construction stage. This project is expected to move into the construction stage in the next few months. And now that we've talked about the project lifecycle, let's talk about our project timeline going forward. The final design was completed this summer of 2023. Property acquisition was completed in August of 2023, and we are currently soliciting bids for a construction contractor, and we expect construction to begin in November or December of 2023. Finally, construction will need to be completed in the summer of 2024 to meet the CDBG-DR funding requirements. As with any construction project, there will be those unavoidable construction inconveniences. We expect heavy machinery and trucks carrying away materials from the site. We expect those trucks to be exiting and entering the property off of FM 1960 or Lazy Ravine Road in the Memorial Hills subdivision. And we expect that there may be some construction noise that will be audible from the adjacent homes in Memorial Hills. The good news for this project, though, is that the project is set back from the surrounding roads, and there is also a tree buffer to help that will mask the project site from the road.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
You for that walkthrough. I'm sure our guests really appreciate that. Alvin, this next question is for you. Jim is asking for you to please share why a wet bottom detention basin was not selected for these basins.
Reason that the wet bottom was not selected is that this particular basin is within the range of the Intercontinental Airport, and we're required to have a dry bottom basin, so we don't create an area for birds to habitat. And so with that being the requirement, FAA, we had to file document papers indicating that this would be a dry bottom basin and would not cause a bird infestation in an area where Intercontinental is in their flight path.
Thank you, Alvin. Jude mentioned that the map shows a concept. However, will the area look the same or similar? Also, how close is the southernmost basin to Memorial Hills subdivision?
Memorial Hills subdivision is actually east of this, kind of where you see the just east of the wetland on that particular map that you had. It's east of our basin, kind of where you see the project boundary is actually their area for their outflow that also flows into Cypress Creek. They have a 30-inch. So they're in the area where you see the light yellow diagram that's identifying the pipe that intersects between the two basins.
Thank you, Alvin. I want to pause for a brief reminder. As a reminder, there are 3 ways to submit a comment about this project during tonight's session. Submit a comment on this site in the box near the presentation live stream. Submit a comment on the Flood Control District website at hcfcd.org/Mercer, or submit a comment via phone at 855-925-2801 utilizing meeting code 2586. If you are joining us via phone tonight, please press star to leave a message. Melissa, this presentation is about the Mercer Stormwater Detention Basin. Can you take us back to slide 9 and talk about stormwater detention basins?
Sure. So the Flood Control District plays a critical role in the overall flood risk reduction for our area. We are only actually one of several jurisdictional entities involved in the overall efforts in our region. For instance, as rain falls on your roof, it starts the process of flowing through several jurisdictions, such as public and private driveways, parking lots or yards, and into streets and drains managed by the Harris County Engineering Department or a municipal utility district or a city, such as the city of Houston, before it outfalls and flows into a larger basin or channel, creek, or bayou that the flood control district owns and maintains. This slide illustrates the various jurisdictions, which sometimes we even share with other entities. Inside neighborhoods, as shown on the left side of this illustration, storm sewers and roadside ditches collect stormwater runoff and start the process of moving it away from homes and streets. Storm sewers, drains, roadside ditches, and outfalls are the responsibility of the underlying municipality. The larger bayous and channels that take collected stormwater and convey it through our drainage system network to Galveston Bay are the responsibility of the flood control district, and this is shown on the right side of the illustration. In the middle of the illustration is a stormwater detention basin that sometimes is constructed by the flood control district. When storm sewers on the left side of the illustration are increased in size without appropriate mitigation, it would increase the amount of stormwater draining into the area's bayous and channels. Since it's our policy to avoid any adverse impacts from our project construction, detention basins are built to help safely take in the increased amount of stormwater and temporarily store it during heavy rainfall events. Often we partner with Harris County precincts, municipal utility districts, or other entities to allow these sponsors to add and maintain recreational amenities such as trails to these basins or channels to allow for multifunctional community use of our facilities.
Thank you, Melissa. Alvin, do you mind revisiting the idea of recreation? That is something folks are really interested in.
Yeah, the flood control district does not typically build trails and other recreationals, but we frequently partner with organizations who want to finance and maintain any recreational elements that the community desire. At this time, we do not have a definitive plan, but what we have done with the design is we provided a 30-foot berm around the basin, should there be any future desire to consider a trail on a particular site of this project.
Thank you, Alvin. Melissa, regulatory floodplain maps are important to Harris County homeowners. Do you feel prepared to talk at a high level about MapNext?
Sure. I mentioned earlier that Atlas 14 rainfall somewhat recently came out that basically increased, it changed the definition of what a 100-year storm is, just based on recent data and recent storms that we've had in the area. So now that we have this new data, we can actually run it through our maps to update the floodplains to give a more accurate representation of what happens during these rainfall events. We do have information about MapNext on our website that you can look into. The other thing that MapNext will address is we just basically have better technology and better tools since the last time these floodplains were mapped. So they will be even more accurate in that regard as well.
Thank you, Melissa. Alvin, as our last question of the evening, Jim is asking, with the basins being adjacent to Mercer Botanic Gardens, can consideration be given to explore if there is something that could be done to make this asset to Mercer Botanic Gardens? Have there been any discussions with the folks at Mercer Botanic Gardens?
In the early beginnings of the concept for this particular basin, there was discussion with the Mercer Botanical Garden, but since then they have decided to develop their own basin to do their mitigation in the area where the botanical garden is. And it's my understanding that that design is in progress as we speak.
Thank you, Alvin. And with that, I would like to share one final reminder that the comment period associated with this meeting runs through October 18th, 2023. But we're always looking for your input and engagement. We also encourage everyone to get flood insurance as flood season in Harris County runs year-round. Thank you again for joining us this evening and for providing your input on this project. We look forward to continuing to share updates as our work moves forward. Stay safe and have a good evening.